Thursday night. So that means Dynasty Nerds is back in the house. Unfortunately, we saw a lot of points last week, but nobody notified the Bucks and the Ravens that they were supposed to keep that trend up because it was so much fun last week, right? We had the Cardinals, we had the Saints, we were seeing offensive touchdowns, defensive touchdowns, big plays galore. And after the first couple of drives, it looked like that trend might continue. However, we're at 10-3. We're at 10-3. And if I'm being honest, if I was doing prize picks tonight, I always pick my prize picks bets ahead of time. They would not be looking good because I really thought this was going to be the night where we were going to have an offensive explosion on Thursday night. I thought we were going to see Tom Brady kind of back in his rhythm. We were going to see Evans and Godwin have big nights. We're going to see Lamar Jackson do some things. We're going to see, and that's part of the problem, I think, on the Ravens side is so far we've had both of the biggest playmakers injured in this game. So Mark Andrews has been out. And on top of that, we have Rashad Bateman that's been out. They've been in and out of the game the whole time. It's really tough to get that consistency. And really after those two guys, it's a lot of inconsistent, young, unproven guys on the Ravens side of the football. I'm talking about Devin Duvernay as like their senior most member, but guys like Robinson's out there and Isaiah Likely at tight end, who's a rookie that I think people like. And Bettor Al agrees with me. You know, there's potential with some of those young guys, but nothing proven. So you get that on top of the fact that we haven't necessarily seen it from Tom Brady's side of the football tonight. And man, it's been tough. Better Boss saying heavy drama in this game, not a lot of offense, but still good drama and suspense. And you're right. This at the very least, we have still seen a good game. It's at least been an enjoyable watch for the most part. Would we like to see more points? Yeah, most of us that are in the fantasy world, that are in the betting world, that kind of stuff, it would be great to, you know, have some more points on the board, have some more yards, things like that. But so far, it is not happening. But we've still got some time. It's still early in the third quarter. Both of these teams can turn it on at a moment's notice. We saw that a couple weeks ago with the Bucks against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. They put up a lot of points, a lot of yards. That could still happen tonight. 11:47. Ravens just got their first possession of the second half. So we'll get that rolling, get that going. How annoying is Robinson right now for fantasy? Yeah, very annoying. The problem is I don't think it would matter because I'm not sure that we're getting Andrews. I haven't heard the update since halftime. I don't know if we're getting Andrews back or Bateman back. Both of them really seem to be banged up. Andrews, it looked like going into the week, wasn't going to play at all. So he was kind of a little bit of a surprise the last few minutes. So Andrews is out for sure. Okay, so he's done for the game for sure. We'll see Bateman. This was one where I do my ranks on Fantasy Pros every week. And I had bumped up Rashad Bateman because of all of the injuries in the secondary to the Buccaneers. I had really bumped him up this week. I thought this was going to be a good Rashad Bateman week. So I had him about 10 or so spots above consensus. Yeah, I'm gonna be hurting for that one for sure this week. But even though the game itself hasn't put up the offensive point gasms that we were hoping, there's been a lot of things that have happened since last week. So let's rewind real quick. Go back to last week. We're winding the show down. We're in the second hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes left. All of a sudden, my producer Tyler comes on and he said, guys, huge trade. Christian McCaffrey was just traded to the 49ers. And I mean, it was wild. I was shocked. I did not think he was somebody we were going to see traded. Obviously, a huge name, big impact for fantasy. But he hasn't been the only trade. We've also seen James Robinson after the Breece Hall injury, which we will touch on. After the Breece Hall injury, we saw James Robinson get traded basically right away over to the New York Giants, the New York Jets. And then today, we saw Kadarius Toney get traded to the Chiefs for a third-round pick. So there's been a lot of actions and other things that have happened there. But before I get into all of that, this week, he's been doing such a great job with us. we thought, you know what, we've been doing every other week quite a bit. Let's just have him on again. We'll have him 2 weeks in a row. Dennis Bennett's back on the show tonight, 11 o'clock. But before that, Dynasty Rich Dotson is going to be on the show at 10:15 tonight. We're going to have him on. So a big Dynasty Nerds night, all kinds of Dynasty Nerds guys. We'll be talking. We'll be talking that Dynasty. We'll be talking all of that goodness here on the Bettor Sports Network with Dynasty Nerds. But let's get into a couple of these trades real quick. First one, James Robinson to the Jets. And as I'm watching, did we just get a touchdown? Yes, we did. Kenyon Drake, I believe, was it a passing touchdown or a rushing touchdown? I'm going to have to look and see. But that ties the ball game up, assuming Mr. Automatic himself, Justin Tucker, does make the extra point. We will be tied up at 10. I'm waiting to see the replay here. Here we go. Yes, pass out of the backfield to Kenyon Drake. So he's been really good in the absence of J.K. Dobbins. He's performed really well. And Gus has looked good tonight too, but obviously we didn't get him in there. Sorry, Edward. Sorry, buddy. James Robinson. People are all over the map on James Robinson. I've been somebody that traditionally has been a little bit higher than consensus on James Robinson. And so far it's worked out really well for me, right? Rookie year, he was playing well. Everybody sell him for a second, sell him for whatever you can get. Well, he ended up being on a points per game basis, I believe, running back 5 2 years ago in the 2020 season. Last year, played well when he started, but we also know that we had the Urban Meyer situation, so there were weeks that he wasn't out there. But overall, still averaged, I believe, 12, 13 points a game. So he's still a very solid running back, 2 for your fantasy football teams. And then with this Achilles injury, everybody wanted nothing to do with him. Everybody was saying that he's going to be washed. Achilles injuries he can't come back from. Well, the first 3 weeks of the fantasy season, he was one of the top running backs in fantasy football. But you could see the writing on the wall. The Jaguars wanted to get Travis Etienne the ball. They want him to be the guy. And I can't blame him. He was a first-round pick. He's an explosive player. So this injury that happened to Breece Hall, and like I said, we'll talk more about the Breece Hall side of this in a little bit. But the injury that happened to Breece Hall opened up this need on the Jets for a more between the tackles grinder because they have Michael Carter, who is a fine running back. He's a good back. He can catch the ball very well. But he's not somebody you want to give 15, 17, 19 carries a game between the tackles. He's not built like that. He's not built for that. James Robinson is built for that kind of punishment. That's how he plays his game. And he's got enough juice that every once in a while, he'll break one as well. So I think it's a good fit. And it's only this year because remember, when you're an undrafted free agent, they're only 3-year contracts to start out. So he will be a free agent at the end of this year, which will then allow Breece to come right back into his main role and it'll all be smooth sailing. So Rich is going to be on a little bit. And we might actually talk about this, but we talked about it on the Dynasty Nerd show this past week. He said that he would take anything he could get for James Robinson. He was completely out. I asked him to clarify. What do you mean by anything in a Dynasty league? Well, Tyler just told me that the Ravens have ruled out Bateman as well. So glad I moved him up this week to get me 0.0 points. That is tough. We'll see how the rest of this game goes, but that's going to be a tough one. We're going to have to see a lot of Lamar Jackson rushing more than likely. But he said he would trade for anything he could get. So I said, what's anything? Because I'm thinking, anything, 5th round pick, like you're going to trade him. No, he said, but if I could get a 3rd round pick for James Robinson, I would sell. I thought that was crazy. We argued about it on the show. Maybe we'll even bring him back up tonight. We put a poll on Dynasty Nerds. About 700 people or so voted on it. Most people, it was like 78% or something like that, said that they would rather have James Robinson than a 3rd round pick. I get the rationale. I get that he's on a new team. There's a decent running back there already in Michael Carter. I understand the rationale. I think he's a very solid back. The fact that they traded for him so quickly wasn't just like they did what Denver did and picked up Latavius Murray off, out of nowhere or, so guys off the street. No, they traded assets, not big assets, but they did trade assets in order to get James Robinson. So I think he's still going to have value, but I think they're going to both cut into each other. So Michael Carter and James Robinson, I think they're going to butt heads a little bit as far as fantasy purposes go. It's going to be really tough to trust either one of them. Fine options is like flex plays, especially over these bye weeks and injuries that we're seeing, but nobody that you're going to really want to count on or trust in, like we were maybe originally thinking we could with Michael Carter when the deal first happened. Then today, we get the breaking news from Adam Schefter that Kadarius Toney. Now, Kadarius Toney, quick refresher, wide receiver out of Florida, really talented player, but just never put up huge numbers. But we saw kind of in his last year there with Kyle Trask, things looked really good. Older player for, a first round wide receiver, but was taken in the first round by the Giants, ended up being nothing at first. Like, was hurt, off the field, question marks, nothing. Then out of nowhere, he has this 2-game stretch where he looks unstoppable. People can't touch him. I mean, he's taking all pro players and just making them look silly. And then once again, he just disappears after that, and we've really not seen anything since. So you saw a flash. You saw a glimpse of what could be for a guy like Rashad Bateman. I'm thinking about Rashad Bateman. I just read his name again that he's out. Ugh. For a guy like Kadarius Toney, we saw flashes of what could be, how talented he could be, the kind of plays he can make. But that's all it's been. It's just a flash. Now he's with the Chiefs. And the Chiefs still gave up decent capital to get him. Third round is nothing to sneeze at. I get that it wasn't a really expensive contract compared to some of these other guys, but Amari Cooper only got a 5th. Toney got a 3rd. This is the rub, though. This is the tricky part with Kadarius Toney and the Chiefs. Toney could be on the ceiling. I'm not saying this is what I'm projecting, but on the ceiling side of things, with someone like Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, he could do some of the things that Tyreek Hill did. That's in the realm of possibility. Am I saying that's what's going to happen? I don't know. But it's in the realm of possibility. On the flip side, we've seen the off-the-field issues. We've seen a lot of other things, the inconsistencies, and he could end up being just flaming out and being nothing. This is one of the most boom bust guys yet. And I don't think I can trade for him. If I have him, he's a hold because I want to see what I got. But if I don't have him, I think the rise in price heading to the Chiefs is just too expensive for the cost. So I think he's a hold. I'm not saying buy. I'm not saying sell. I'm saying hold. If you got him, good. If not, leave it be. Pork Chop asking, what are we doing with Zach Wilson? I have him and Dak and Zappy in my Dynasty League, and I feel like I need to upgrade Wilson. Now, part of this question is going to come down to, is this a 1 QB or is this a super flex? Because that does make a little bit of a difference. Assuming it's super flex, if you are a contender, always super flex. I like it. Are you contender or rebuild? Because if you're a contender, I would want to get an upgrade. I don't know what to do with Wilson yet. And I know that's not the answer you were looking for. If you're a contender, though, absolutely upgrade. If not, I struggle with this because he hasn't looked great. But he hasn't looked terrible, and I like the building around him. And we see this out of steadier organizations that I think the Jets are starting to become that with Robert Saleh and LaFleur and the offensive line they've built and the weapons like Brees and all those guys. And they're not going to be in range to get one of these top quarterbacks because they've already won too many games. They're not going to be in the sweepstakes for Stroud. They're not going to be in the sweepstakes for Bryce Young. So now we're talking about the next tier of guys, the Will Levises of the world and Hayden Hooker of the world and different guys like that. So at this point, if you are in rebuild, I'm probably holding on for the time being to see what I have. If somebody wants to give you more than he's worth, let's say somebody wants to give you a first round 2023 pick that you think could be inside the top 5 and you can get one of those young quarterbacks, then sure, I'm willing to do that. But outside of that, I don't know that you're going to get what he's probably worth. And his upside is still very high. Remember, he had a on and off rookie year with injuries. Then he started the year injured as well. So it's been a long time since he's consistently played football. And I think it's going to take some time for that muscle memory, the understanding of the playbook, the chemistry, I think it's going to take some time for all of those things to really truly get going. So I think he's more of a hold unless you can get that kind of a deal like I just mentioned. If you can get somebody to overpay for a Zach Wilson, then I'm willing to sell. But otherwise, I think I would rather just hold on. Jackson's Jigsaw. I was nervous about a trade. One quarterback, J.K. and Bellinger, or Kareem Hunt, and a very late 23 first. Which side are you on? Ooh, that is a really difficult one. And I know we're going to be getting Dynasty Rich on here in just a second, so we can ask him these questions as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and bring him in. But real quick for me, I would probably stick with the J.K. and Bellinger side because you said it's a very late 23 first. Had that been a mid, I might have considered the other side. But I think I'm going to stick with J.K. and Bellinger for the moment. But it is tough. That's a really close one. I understand why you're struggling with it. That would be the side I would, yeah, in a rebuild, because I don't really want Kareem Hunt in a rebuild. I like both of those other guys in a rebuild. Dynasty Rich Dotson, how's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty swell, my friend.
How you liking this game so far?
It's like any other Thursday night game. It's just here to watch. Nothing too exciting. Kind of somewhat of a death pool. The Ravens side, Mark Andrews out, Rashad Bateman's out. This string of injuries it's not going to stop. It seems like it's like that snake you light on, that little black thing you light on 4th of July. It turns into that snake and just keeps growing and going and going and going. That's where we're at.
Well, Rich, we had a couple Dynasty questions that I was just answering. And obviously, you know a little bit about Dynasty. So, why don't we ask you these questions as well? Would you rather have J.K. Dobbins on a rebuild? Would you rather have J.K. Dobbins and Daniel Bellinger on a rebuild? Or would you rather have Kareem Hunt and a very late first? So I'm assuming that's pick 11 or 12.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt's kind of irrelevant to me, a 27-year-old running back. Yes, he's going to probably get traded, but if he does, he's a free agent next year and probably the deepest running back free agent class we've ever seen, on top of one of the better running back classes we've seen in a long time as well. So I'm going to go ahead. So it's basically, I look at it, it's like a late 23 first or Daniel Bellinger and J.K. Dobbins. And when you got a late first, it's hard to get a good high upside running back. And I know this injury has been damning for J.K. Dobbins for the last basically 2 years. But I still like him as a player. I hope this knee scope kind of gets him right. And I also like Daniel Bellinger as well. A prospect that you and I scouted. We really liked his tape. Goes to the Giants. Seems like he was like the top target for the Giants in the passing game. So give me 2 really good upside players there instead of that late 23 first.
Yeah, we've got the trade questions rolling in. So I had some questions I was going to ask you, but we're going to keep these going for now because we want to keep the people happy. So Porkchop said he traded Dameon Pierce and he got in return Najee Harris and Brandon Cooks. Do you think Cooks gets traded by the deadline, then you sell? But overall, the first part of that, do you like that? Would you give up Dameon Pierce to get Najee and Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, I think it's a good trade because I mean Najee and Dameon Pierce, like they're pretty close to value. 2 young running backs. I know Najee has not performed whatsoever like he did last year, but he's still the Pittsburgh Steelers starting running back. Will be for quite some time. We want to assume for how good Dameon Pierce has looked that he's the starting running back for the Houston Texans for a while. But I mean, the Texans did the same thing before. Probably like 12 years ago when they had Steve Slayton came out, had an awesome rookie year, and then you never heard of him ever again for being a late
Aaron
draft
Foster,
pick.
baby.
So getting Brandon Cooks on top of that is a nice move to me because by making that trade, then you hope it gets traded. And anytime a player gets traded into a situation that somebody feels better, they're going to see a spike in their ADP or overall trade value. So that way I could trade away Brandon Cooks and probably get a little bit more on top. So it'd be like get a Najee Harris plus, maybe even possibly a late first if you play your cards right. So I'd actually prefer the Najee Harris side on that one.
I would too, yeah, and you're absolutely right. If Cooks, because it's been rumored that a lot of teams are discussing Cooks. I'm guessing the Chiefs are out of that now with the Kadarius Toney trade. But I guess it's still a possibility. But I think the Packers are one that if he goes to the Packers, you're probably able to get a 23 first for Brandon Cooks at that point, because people are going to lose their minds giving him Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, which is the best quarterback he's had since Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's a great spot if you could make that happen.
Yep. So I'm with you. I would take the Najee side. As much as I'm not a big Najee guy, I would still take that side over top of Dameon Pierce. The only way I would even sort of question that one is if I was a true legit contender and I really needed Pierce for this year. But you still just never know with these later round running backs. So I like the Najee side. Another one here, Wright Edmondson. In a rebuild, I was just offered a late 23 first and a mid 23 second for ETN. This is a super flex PPR tight end premium. I'm holding because I think his value will go up, but am I crazy?
No, I don't think he's crazy at all. I wouldn't take that offer. I'm going to take a late first for Travis Etienne, a young, explosive running back who's just now finally getting an opportunity we expect him to get when he was drafted in the first round, albeit he had the Liz Frank injury last year. And he didn't start the season off super hot with James Robinson there. So absolutely not. Because again, you're not getting that same value in return with the late first, even though it's super flex in the back of the draft. Young running backs are dynasty gold. They are the best currency you're going to have in any fantasy football league. Outside of a young quarterback in Superflex. So because it's such supply and demand, there's right. Not a lot out there. There's not a lot of 3-down running backs. Travis Etienne, we've seen his carries increase every single week, and we're just waiting for him to get involved in that passing game so he can explode and be a high-end running back, mid-range running back one. So, no, I'm not taking that deal. If you want Etienne off of me right now, Garrett, like I probably need a top 6 first.
I'm with guaranteed. You. That's kind of what I was thinking through his class. And I know you're not quite as familiar with it because really in January is when you start digging in and studying the prospects. But right now, I wouldn't, if I'm in a super flex, I wouldn't take him. I would rather have the 2 quarterbacks, Bijan for sure ahead. But then after that, I'm somewhere between 4 and 6 on like where I would take ETN in this class. It depends on what we see from like Jackson Smith and Jigba at the end of the year and combine and all that kind of stuff, draft capital. Same thing with Gibbs, but like he's in that range of like 4 to 6. So I would need at least the 4 to 6 to replace what I think I'm getting in Travis Etienne. And then on top of that, I would want more on top of it. So if that first became somewhere between a 4 to 6, then yeah, I would do it as long as I'm getting the second on top as well. Real quickly, Isaiah Likely with the touchdown just now. Rookie tight end. We knew with Mark Andrews potentially being out, he was a name that was thrown around a lot this week. Greg Roman talked about how he was more of a receiver. If you have him on your dynasty teams, you're happy. Hopefully this isn't a long-term injury for Andrews because the tight end position is already brutal as it is. All right. Rich, I think that's all of the trade questions for now. If anybody else has any trade questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But I wanted to talk to you about Kadarius Toney. We had this trade go down today. The Chiefs get a third and potentially a little bit more on top for Kadarius Toney. Is Toney a buy for you? Is he a sell for you? Or is he a hold for you? Because obviously his value has gone up significantly with this deal. How do you feel about him as a Kansas City Chief?
Can I say he's all of the above? As crazy as that might sound, because yeah, I'm interested in buying Toney 100%, but what's the price tag? Because I guarantee if you go to any dynasty team right now and you're like, hey, Toney just got traded to the Chiefs, what do you want for him? They're like, give me a 23 first. And you're like, dude, this dude's only played like 6 games. He's been in the NFL for a couple of years. He never plays. He's always hurt. Even though he's just on Twitter today saying he's not hurt, so maybe like this year is just kind of being held out by Dable. But I mean, listen, he showed us when he does play, he's explosive. He can plant that foot. He can go. He's a very dynamic player. The Chiefs get him a third-round pick in the grand scheme of things. It's a relatively high pick.
It is.
Via trade, for somebody. They have no true number one receiver on that offense right now. And I know you and I love Sky Moore, but I mean, he hasn't really shown us much whatsoever.
Nope, not yet.
Which is fine, which we expected to be coming out of FCS school. We expect him to like slowly develop to the NFL, right? Like they use this year as a year to grow. So, yeah, I mean, I would want to buy Tony, but I'm not paying a 23 first for Tony because I feel like I get a really good receiver or just a good quality player altogether with that first, or on top, or flip that around, trade my 23 first for a more proven receiver. If I own Tony at the same time, like, why would I sell for anything less than a first? Because let's see what the Chiefs have to offer, right? Like if they comes in, he's the number one receiver with playing one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. That's exciting as well. And so to me, why would I sell? He'd be a hold in that standpoint. So I think he's just gonna be one of those players like right now today. It's probably not the best time to buy. I think his price will dip at some point because you would have to expect that there'll probably be with Tony a little bit ups and downs, going to a new offense. He does have that attitude issue that came out of college. He came out of college with. We don't know all the obviously inside details to that, but that could be a concern as well. Will he mesh with Andy Reid? Will he mesh with Pat Mahomes here? So
Mahomes,
there is some questions here about how it's going to fit. So if there's a little bit of a roller coaster, you could probably buy Tony a little bit cheaper than what he is today. I'm excited for him. If I have Kadarius Toney, I'm a very excited dynasty player to have him on my roster to see like him go for the Giants offense to the Chiefs offense. But at the same time, he couldn't make it with the Giants. The Giants desperately needed a receiver to step up and be their number one guy. Right now, it's Darius Slayton, and this is a team that they spent a first round pick on him, and it just couldn't make it work. So there's concerns. There's way more red flags on Tony than there's not, and I'm always cautious to buy those kind of players and add them to my roster because more times than not, those red flags don't go away. I mean, that's what I've learned out of years of playing Dynasty. It's as good as the player is and as much as you want to work, sometimes that player's personality just doesn't mesh with professional football.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. And I kind of ended up with saying, like, I think he's a hold. Chances are you aren't going to be able to get him for a cheap price. You mentioned the 23 first. And at this point, there's no way I would be willing to sell or be willing to pay a 23 first for him. There's too much risk involved. But if you have him, you're happy. You don't want to give him up. You want to ride this roller coaster a little bit. So I'm 100% with you. I think he ends up being more of a hold.
And does that price change? Like if you play the waiting game and wait and see, and say he has a good week with the Chiefs next week, does that price tag really go up much higher than a 23 first? Like let it play out and then pay that price, because even then, I think if somebody's asking for a 23 first now, and then Tony goes out and has like a solid game, he has 7 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. How much more is that price going up? Hey, I want a first and a second. Well, if it's going to work with the Chiefs, he's easily worth a first and a second. So I think you could play the waiting game here and let it kind of play itself out.
I'm with you there. Jackson's Jigsaw asks, we've got another one if you have time. 1 QB league, Justin Herbert. Hold on, I just scrolled. Justin Herbert for an early 23 first and an early 23 second. Which side? Again, rebuilding team, and Tannehill is the backup. So 1 QB league, you get an early first and second. That's a tough one.
Yeah, not for me. It's not. I'm taking an early 20. If I'm a rebuild team, and I'm not saying this lightly because I understand Justin Herbert, and Superflex is a top 3 pick. I know he's a top tier quarterback, but in a 1 QB league, you can always go find a quarterback. There's always gonna be that one team that ends up having 2 quarterbacks, right? The guy who took Justin Herbert in the 3rd round, and they got Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, or they've had Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson comes back and they got Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a team out there where you can work that out later down the road when your team's getting ready to compete to go get that quarterback. They're so much easier to get. And even a player like Justin Herbert, you can go get him. Where if you take that high first and a high second, like say you did that this year, right? And you end up with Kenneth Walker and Dameon Pierce right now on your roster. And say you traded Justin Herbert last year for 1-3, and you end up getting Kenneth Walker at 1-3 and Dameon Pierce in the second, or George Pickens in the second. One of those two, however way you want to interchange that. Guys that we had ranked there and that went there for their ADP. Right now, if you offer George Pickens or Dameon Pierce or Kenneth, obviously I wouldn't use Kenneth Walker, but Dameon Pierce or George Pickens, and you threw something else on top of that, you can go get somebody's second quarterback that can compete. So I'm taking the picks in a 1 QB league over the quarterback, because also in a 1 QB league, like, it's easy to find these older quarterbacks that are a little bit older as well and buy them for a much better discount for like second round picks.
Yeah, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, those kind of guys.
Yeah, that you can use for 3 to 4 years, you know what I mean, on your roster. And I get it. These high-end quarterbacks, like obviously like a Josh Allen, they'll carry you to the playoffs by themselves, but you still need a complete roster. And if you're going to put me in position with a high first to get a premier running back, that's the weight I'm looking to carry my team. I would rather have the high-end points at the valuable positions, which are the running back and wide receivers in 1 QB, and then find a quarterback to help pad those stats up or give me a big game or try and find a stack somewhere. Like, if I'm starting 3 wide receivers, okay, where can I stack this receiving core? Where can I go out there and attack a quarterback and make a flip? Or, honestly, in a 1 QB league with a high second, you could take probably the best quarterback in this class, whether it be C.J. Stroud, Levis, if it's Bryce, like one of those guys, they'll be available at 1-2 too. So you can kind of get the best running back and grab a quarterback to end up being a high-end quarterback as well if you chose to do so.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit closer for me than it is for you, but I agree. I would take the picks in a 1 QB league. I think probably an early to mid first is probably about the right price for some of those top quarterbacks. So the fact that you are also getting the early second on top of it really kind of puts it over the top. But you're right. If you're able to get a Bijan Robinson or Gibbs or one of these guys, that can be huge in a 1 QB league. Because Tom Brady's been available every single season for the past 3 seasons. And I get it. He's not been as good this year, but he was quarterback, 5 last year, quarterback 3. He was a legit quarterback 1 last year. And he's been available every single year for the past 7 years.
Tom Brady was the second highest scoring player in all of fantasy last year.
There we go. He was quarterback 2. You can always get Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. Those guys are always available. And even guys like Dak Prescott are not that expensive to get in 1 QB league. So anytime that you can get high-end draft capital for quarterbacks, I'm willing to do it. Josh Allen would be a little tougher, but even if it was Josh Allen, I still think I would take that deal.
It would definitely be tougher because he is such a like literally carry your team to playoffs kind of player. Right. But again, I mean, when you're in rebuild, which is what he said his team was, right? Like, you have to do what you have to do to acquire as much young talent as possible. And this is addition by subtraction. You're taking a really good player off your team, which is going to make your team worse, which is going to boost up your draft capital. So on top of that first that you're getting, you expect to be really high. You still have your first 2, I would assume, right, which is going to be high. And like you mentioned, if you can come out this draft with all of a sudden you have Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs on top of Jackson Smith and Jigba or in Jordan Addison to go with then a quarterback you take in a second, that right there, those 3 players are a really good core to start off with, right by itself. And then you have your second 2, and it's going to be a really deep draft class. So if you got a guy like Michael Mayer, that tight end, maybe you can fill out multiple spots here. So I think it's one of the hardest things people don't come to realize, Garrett, when you're playing Dynasty is when you have a really good player or 2, and when you're trying to blow it up, you're like, oh, well, I can't trade him. When the mindset should be, if you blow it up, like, I need to trade everybody. I need as much draft capital as I possibly can because I am nowhere near to be competing because I'm about to blow this up. You're thinking 3 years down the road. And yeah, Justin Herbert, 3 years down the road, you would expect still to be good. But again, you don't know anything for sure. Like, you don't know anything for sure. We thought Russell Wilson was going to go to Broncos and like potentially win the AFC West and carry this team to a whole nother level. and that didn't happen. Tom Brady, and I know, granted, Tom Brady's 45. He threw for 5,000 yards last year, and look at him this year. Not the same player. You got to live in the window you're in, right? You got to play. You got to play where you're at the current moment, and not look too down the road. Because if you look too far down the road, you're going to lose sight where you are right now. So if Justin Herbert's going to get you a really good return, then you sell Justin Herbert and get that really good return, and then you figure it out later because maybe in a couple of years you can get Justin Herbert back for the same cost.
Yeah.
You know, and in the meantime, he's gone. He's helping your team be worse, so you're getting better players by not doing as well. Because every win and every loss is the difference between you picking 5, 4, and 3. And we learn every single year, every draft slot matters because it's the difference between getting the player that busts out and doesn't bust out. It's the difference between getting Devontae Adams and getting Dorial Green-Beckham. You know, it's really that much of a difference sometimes. And you don't want to be on the losing end of those draft picks because that's something that's going to really set your team back way more than having Justin Herbert.
All right, last one real quick. I know that there's more questions. I'll be happy to get to them after Rich is gone, but I don't want to keep them on too long here. But last one we'll cover together here. Porkchop asks, sell DJ Moore or hold for a value spike since he is the only guy to go to. Now, Rich, I know you and I have both been really big DJ Moore guys, and I'll say this before you go. I don't think now is the right time to sell. His value is at an all-time low. It's not going to get any lower. It's almost not even fathomable that it could get any lower. So I'm a holding for at least the time being. I do think better days are still ahead. Rich, what do you think?
Yeah, when it comes to DJ Moore shares, call me Pac-Man because I'm just gobbling those bad boys up. Gobble. It's like Thanksgiving right around the corner, right? Yeah, nom. Yeah, I'm a DJ Moore truther. I think the talent's there. I think he's been surrounded by nothing but trash. So that's like it's radiating stink, but it's not coming from him. It's all the trash around him. He's still a quality player. We saw that last week. If you just give him an okay quarterback like PJ Walker, found him in the end zone there. So I'm buying a dip. I am not selling DJ Moore. Even if your team's like not in good shape, he's a 25-year-old receiver who just signed a contract extension who's very, very talented. They're going to have to figure this quarterback situation out. So I am holding DJ Moore 100%. I am not selling him. It would take, it'd probably take a high-end first for me to give up DJ Moore, if I'm being honest.
Me too.
I need because he's still young, he's still talented, and if it's not like a top 6 pick, and then even then, I want to know who's on the board there and how this draft plays out before I trade DJ Moore. I know this draft class is really deep, but I want to see how it all plays out and where these players end up because too many people do this in Dynasty where it's always the grass is greener on the other side. Like, oh, I got to trade him for this unknown. Like, it's all about the unknown. And I get it. The unknown could turn into Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Sure.
And that could be the world difference maker. And that's what you're looking for.
Oh,
but
no.
those are
Gus Edwards is now down too.
Yeah, he's getting
this
up.
Poor backfield.
Yeah, I know. Oh, wait, he's not getting up. Oh, he's up. But I mean, it's just a hard way to live in Dynasty. Is you're always chasing that unicorn, right? Like you're always chasing that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that rainbow never ends. When you have a player that's 25 and he's a good player, I always look at it as if you pick that number 5 or 6 and you got DJ Moore, you'd be so happy. You'd be like, Look at me. I'm a dynasty stud out here drafting these rookies like no tomorrow. Nobody can touch me. It's like people are so if you don't get Justin Jefferson, if you don't get Jonathan Taylor, if you don't get Kyle Pitts, it's like you lost the draft. And that's not the case. Because if that's the case, everybody's losing the draft, man. You have to be okay with wide receiver 2s. That's a win. That's a massive win. A wide receiver 2. A high-end running back 2. That's a win. A top 7 tight end, that's finding the gold at the end of the rainbow. You know what I mean? It's you gotta be okay with adding quality, and DJ Moore falls in that line of just quality young player. Look at this receiving landscape even right now, or overall dynasty landscape. You're if you look at receivers, you're well, how many receivers are playing right now that I would rather have than DJ Moore? Right? Maybe you can name anywhere, let's say, from 12 to 15 guys, maybe. The other people would say, I don't know if I would name 12 to 15 other receivers. I probably wouldn't. And that, at worst, puts him as your high, mid-range wide receiver 2. that's a home run draft pick. That's a home run draft pick. So if you're just offering me a draft pick for a guy like DJ Moore, I'm sorry, man. I'm just going to pass. And it's why I always sell. Like, people are like, man, Rich, you don't like your draft picks. It's like, no, I like good players. So if I could sell a draft pick that's going to be mid to late for a proven player,
Right.
that can help my roster and help my roster for the next 2 to 3 years, in a game that we play called Dynasty Fantasy Football that literally cycles on 2 to 3 year windows, then I'm all in on that, because I'll take the proven commodity over that draft pick any day of the week, because it's probably a 50-50 shot that he's just an everyday starter on your roster.
Well, it helps mitigate risk so much. And that's the thing. If you can help mitigate risk on your teams and you can have a bunch of solid players, you're going to do well most weeks, because as opposed to that, yeah, he's had 2 or 3 like huge games, but I never know when to trust him. And you're like, that's a tough place to live. So you mitigate risk. Those draft picks, there's a lot of risk, a lot of reward, but a lot of risk as well. Rich, thank you so much for coming on the show. Remind the fine people where they can find you on Twitter, and anything else from Nerds that you want to plug, like the GM tool, Nerd Score, whatever you want to plug.
Yeah, I know this is a Dynasty Nerds show. You can follow me on Twitter at Dynasty Rich, and of course Dynasty Nerds, which is Garrett's show here. We have a podcast, comes out every single Wednesday. Dynasty GM, to me, the best tool on the market to help Dynasty players out there if you're interested in getting into Dynasty. So if you're just watching, if you're listening or watching the show and you're like, oh, I really enjoy this show, they do talk about Dynasty a lot, like I'd like to get into that. We are here to help you every step of the way. We are here for the casual Dynasty player to make sure that when you do start playing, that you're more than likely to come out on top of your league year in, year out. And you're not making some of these simple mistakes like, trading away your draft capital for Brendan Cooks or an older player. And more importantly, when draft season comes around, we do a very deep, thorough analysis of each rookie class. We break down every rookie pretty thoroughly to give you the best, to put you in the best position to make sure that you come out of the Dynasty draft, rookie draft, with the most capital possible, put you in the best position not to win this year, but long term. So everything Dynasty Nerds at Dynasty Rich. Check us out. Me and my friend Garrett every single week.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you coming on.
See you Tuesday, homie.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that's Dynasty Rich, one of the legends. And I don't say that sarcastically. I say that genuinely. One of the legends in the Dynasty community, one of the first guys doing it, has kept up the consistency for almost a decade now. Fantastic guy, fantastic podcast host. Appreciate him coming on. And with that, we are going to take a quick break. Right now, 17-13, Ravens in the lead. We'll be back in a minute.
Front Yard Fantasy, weekday 7 Eastern on Bettor Sports Network.
There was a tweet about the refs that had me kind of cracking up the other day, because somebody was like, we have the technology to track the ball down to a centimeter and figure out, what speed these guys are running on the field. Yet somehow we still mark the ball by
That's my favorite.
a 60-year-old dude eyeballing it, and then we run over with literal chains and measure it. It's like, you think we can probably get that figured
it's like
out.
The least precise way to measure something, and then immediately following that up with a super precise way of measuring something.
Yeah, it's like we have
That's what I love. Like if you're a millimeter short of that chain that they bring out there, that they ran out it as best they could in a straight line. But if you first they just go here, and then they grab the chains and they run in the straightest line possible. But then if you are 1 millimeter short with that football, doesn't count. Sorry. Couldn't have been human error. You're just short.
That's exactly. And, they bring up the index card or whatever. Meanwhile, they have satellites in space tracking how fast Brandon Ayuk ran on an end around. But we can't.
and I can see that number live while he's doing it. Like I can see every player's speed on the screen live.
I love that. It's and not to mention that dude's trying to make the spot, and the player always tosses the ball right into his face. Right? He's coming over to spot it, and it's every other time the player just here you go. Here's another thing to juggle.
On call with Dr. Roto.
If the Giants don't win another game this year, A, I'll be shocked. But B, I'll still think that they're better than they were with Joe Judge. much better because I think Brian Dable's got a lot out of this team already. And I'm seeing what this team could be. See, that's the problem with owners and general managers. I see Nathaniel Hackett and I see a guy who can't get it done. I see Matt Rule and see a guy who never should have been hired. Disaster right away. Sometimes a good coordinator in the NFL is better. I don't even say sometimes. Most of the time, a good coordinator in the NFL is better than a college coach because the NFL coordinators, they know the system. They've been there. They've played. They've been around it. Life of me, I don't know why Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten a job yet. Deuce Staley's going to get a job. Somebody's going to hire that dude. When you've been around the game, you understand it. These college guys come, they don't know it.
Join the show with one touch of a button. It's Sports Talk 3.0 on Bettor Sports Network.
Welcome back in. Bucks, Ravens, Dynasty Talk. Just got done with Dynasty Rich at Dynasty Rich on Twitter. Rich Dotson, legend in the Dynasty space. My co-host, or I guess I'm his co-host, along with Matt O'Hara. Each and every week, you can find us on the Dynasty Nerds podcast and the Nerd Herd podcast. That's 2 podcasts a week. Come out every week on Wednesday. As I'm speaking here, Devin Duvernay, guy we were talking about last week, that we were talking about could be getting more involved in this offense. They're really looking for that other playmaker. Touchdown here puts the Baltimore Ravens up 23-13, waiting on the extra point here. So that could be 24-13, which means good things for the offenses, right? It means we're starting to see some points, but it's also going to mean desperation mode for the Buccaneers. They've got to get 2 scores and in a hurry. Jalen saying Gus Edwards probably not coming back. This poor backfield cannot seem to stay healthy no matter what. It's been a bummer. It's been an absolute bummer. Heavy T saying Bucks are absolutely awful at this point. It's the Eagles conference to lose. It is funny how quickly that conference has just lost a lot of its pizzazz, right? You had the Bucks that you were excited about. The Rams, the defending Super Bowl champs, they do not look like themselves at all. And for as much as we have made fun of the NFC East for a long time, it's the NFC East. The NFC East is the NFC this year, right? I mean, we're talking about the Eagles, who are 6-0. They look fantastic. The Cowboys defense is legitimate, and getting back Dak back, getting him healthy, like that team could be very good. And then the Giants, the Giants are playing fantastic, and their schedule is not that difficult the rest of the way. As much as I've made fun of the NFC least for a long time, and it's been deserved. I mean, we're having teams that aren't even 500 make the playoffs from that division. They're legit. They're legit. Edward saying don't sleep on the Vikings. Vikings could be. I mean, they're getting the wins. They haven't had quite as tough of a schedule as some other teams. They haven't had to play a lot of tough competition. We'll see when they're tested a little bit more. But we will see. We will see. All right, I'm going to get back to a couple of these questions before we get our own Dennis Bennett on here in a little bit. And haven't heard from Gator yet. He is a staple on Thursday nights. I'm not sure that he's missed one yet, to be honest. Not sure that he's missed one yet. And if he has, it's only been one. I don't see him yet. So we might have to put on an APB for our boy Gator, because the people want what the people want, and the people want Gator. All right, let me get back to a couple of these questions that Rich and I did not have an opportunity to get to. Jigsaw asking Wan'Dale Robinson or Brian Robinson. So the Robinsons here. I'm going to go Wan'Dale, especially with the departure of Kadarius Toney. That was always one of the biggest questions, was who's going to play. They kind of play a similar position. They're these quick, twitchy, slot guys, it's Wandale. Wandale's going to be the guy there. I like Brian Robinson, and he is going to be a fine, and Rich patented the hashtag 2 to 3 year window. He'll be a fine running back in that window, but he's not going to catch a ton of passes. He's not a guy that's going to break off a lot of long runs. So you're looking at a lot of, 15 carries for 63 yards and a catch for 8 yards. Like, you're looking at a lot of games like that, and you're going to need a touchdown for him to be startable. So I would rather gamble on the upside of a player like Wandale. Even if it busts, Brian Robinson is going to be a very hard player to start on a consistent basis, I think, at least for the time being. And we're seeing Antonio Gibson isn't going away either. He's still getting double-digit touches in most of these games, so he's not going away. Bucks get the ball back right now, 24-13, 6:55 to go, so a little less than half of the fourth quarter remaining. Really hoping to see. I have a team. I don't have many teams. I actually think I have one team that has Tom Brady on it, but it's my main home league. And I have him, Mike Evans, and Leonard Fournette. So I would like to see a couple of touchdown drives here. That would be fantastic. But other question, would you trade Garrett Wilson or Drake London for Tony in Dynasty? Cavelli, if you're still here, I know it's been a minute since you asked this question. Absolutely hold on to Garrett Wilson and Drake London, because right now you're taking two of the top young stud receivers and you're gambling on a guy that could be a stud. We've already seen flashes of what they can do on a more consistent basis with not a lot of help. Tony is just such a risk that even if he pans out in 3 weeks and we see, okay, this is legitimate, he's consistently getting it, you could probably still trade one of those guys to get him if you still want him. So I'm waiting a few weeks, but right now I'm absolutely still holding on to Drake London and Garrett Wilson in Dynasty leagues. All right. Wright Edmondson asks, best landing spots for rumored wide receiver trade candidates: DJ Moore, Jared Jeudy, Brandon Cooks. And right now we're seeing a lot of Tom Brady to Mike Evans. I'm liking that. I am liking that. Best landing spots right now, I think Green Bay is absolutely the best landing spot. Wide open team. They're looking for that stud wide receiver. I think that's a great landing spot. The Giants, even though I know they just traded away a wide receiver, I think they're a team that absolutely wants a receiver. I would not be shocked if they end up figuring out a deal for Jerry Jeudy. I really feel like that could end up happening. So I think the Giants are another, solid candidate to get one. I think the Chiefs are probably out at this point. I don't think we're going to see anything from them. Pass interference? No, it was close. Oh, we do see a flag. Scotty Miller down the field. It looked like he had his head turned. So I didn't think it was going to be a flag, but that's big. So I would say the Giants and the Packers, obviously, I think are the two top landing spots for a wide receiver right now. Outside of those two, I don't know that there's going to be any other teams other than I said, like maybe the Chiefs could do more, but I don't think they're wanting to give up anything else to get any more receivers. So I think those are really the only two teams that are going to be actively looking. I mean, you could make an argument that, the problem is a lot of the other teams that could maybe use some receiver help really aren't in it right now, like really aren't relevant as far as making a run. You could maybe see the Cowboys. I could see that happening. I don't know that it's necessarily likely, but I think you could see the Cowboys. Never rule out Jerry Jeudy and any of this kind of stuff. We could see that happen. Tristan saying, what's the likelihometer that Gator will be on the show? Well, most weeks the likelihometer is like 9.5, but I don't know. I usually hear from Gator by now, so we'll have to see. I don't know. Heavy T saying Gator watching from the rafters like Sting. He's just waiting to hop in, man. I love that guy. He's such a good dude. All right, so let's get back to some of these running backs. I wanted to talk about these running backs. I talked about these guys a lot on this past week's podcast, Dynasty Near Podcast. You want to check that out. You can get some more information on these players. But we went from a couple weeks ago where running back was just kind of a dead zone, right? We had a lot of these top-end running backs that were either getting injured, that were underperforming. Just things weren't going well. A lot of the bigger names are now healthy, playing better again. Austin Eckler obviously has been fantastic. Alvin Kamara is back to himself. Derrick Henry's playing well. Even Jonathan Taylor, I know he didn't have a fantastic game, but still had 15 PPR points last week. It's still a very solid number there from him. So we're seeing things get back to normal. But at the very same time, we're starting to see an ascension from some other running backs. Travis Etienne, we talked about a little bit earlier in some of the trade questions. He's averaging nearly 8 yards per carry over the past 3 games. And obviously, James Robinson is now gone. No longer an issue for him there. And we just had a Tom Brady touchdown. Cade Otton. There is a flag on the play, though. So let's see if it was a holding. It was a penalty on the offense. Dang it. I needed that Tom Brady touchdown there. Don't like that. Don't like that, guys. They could still kick a field goal, though. It would still be an 8-point game, so they would be within that 1 score. Oh, man. Can't hold there like that. He made it way too obvious. But Travis Etienne, with J-Rob gone, all of that, he's clearly ascending in value. Kenneth Walker, I saw a Keep Trade cut today. Dynasty-wise, people have him ranked as high as the 3rd ranked running back in Dynasty. Now, he's been very good these past 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong. He's looked fantastic. But 3? Number 3? After 2 weeks? That's a little rich for my blood. So I'm not quite there on that. Josh Jacobs currently sitting as the running back 2, 22 points per game in full PPR. 22. And that's always been the issue with Jacobs, right? The issue with Josh Jacobs has always been that he hasn't been getting the receiving work. And we thought, well, shoot, now we have, they're going for it on 4th down. What is going on now? False start. My goodness. This Buccaneers team's got to clean it up. That's always something that Tom Brady teams have prided themselves in. Being smart, not taking penalties, things like that. This is not good. But all the time with John Gruden under that regime, Josh Jacobs never got the targets in the receiving game. We said, why? That was always one of his best assets coming out of college, was his ability to be able to catch the football. Why wouldn't you use him in that capacity? And then we get Josh McDaniel over there. They said, well, shoot, he's always had a separate pass catching back from his main running back. So it's going to be Abdullah. It's going to be Drake. It's going to be one of those guys, right? Well, apparently not. He's been getting most of the receiving work and basically all of the running work. 3 touchdowns last week. Looked great. Ramondre Stevenson. I'm a big Stevenson fan. If you've been listening to the show much at all lately, I've talked quite a bit about Ramondre Stevenson. Out-touched Damian Harris last week. 19 touches to 4 on Monday Night Football. And that's including 8 receptions. That's the thing that really puts him over the top. We were talking about the guys that get the receptions in Tampa, or not Tampa Bay, in New England. That's where it's at. And with as big and physical as he is, he's still going to get a lot of red zone looks. He's a player. He's an absolute player. I know that there's some temptation to sell there, and I get it. If you're in a rebuild, any running back at any time is always available. Any running back, just because of how short their shelf life is and how frequently we see injuries at the position. So if I'm in a rebuild, I'm always willing to sell a guy like Ramondre Stevenson. But if you're a contender, I think he could be a legitimate asset for you going down the rest of this season, and I think he's going to be fantastic. So we see his stock rising. Khalil Herbert, his stock's rising. I mean, he's in a legitimate timeshare now with David Montgomery. Each and every week, he's getting a little bit more of the action, a little bit more of the action, a little bit more of the action. And in his time where he got to be the guy last year, looked really good. Looked really good. Raheem Mostert averaging 15 points per game over the last 3 weeks. Been getting a lot of the work there in Miami. Miami that has that incredible passing attack. And Dennis Bennett will be joining us any minute. We'll maybe talk about a couple of these guys here, but I want to talk some quarterbacks with Dennis because I have some thoughts on some of these guys. But he's played really well. He's got familiarity with the with the scheme, being with now I'm blanking on his name. What? Why can't I do this? Why can't I think? Let's bring Dennis Bennett on. I'm drawing a blank on names. It's driving me nuts. Let's get Dennis Bennett on here. We can start talking to him about quarterback, but Mostert, he's played a lot better. Isaiah Pacheco, maybe rise in value. Although, with that being said, like I would absolutely trade Isaiah Pacheco. Their starting running back is either irrelevant or is not in this roster right now. They'll draft somebody next year. Dennis Bennett, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing fantastic. Just trying to, see if Brady gets up to that 280.5 number there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I took a ton of overs, and you sent your over under on Prize Picks to me earlier. And just a reminder, go to Prize Picks. If you put in the promo code nerds, you get. I'm trying to remember what you get. I think a deposit match up to $100. Something fantastic like that.
Match up to $100.
Yeah, Rich always does that read, so I'm not as familiar, but I'll do the prediction strike one. But yeah, go over there, use the promo code nerds, get yourself some free money. But I took a lot of the overs, and even though it's a lower scoring game than I thought it was going to be, the Evans hit, the Godwin hit, so those are good. I'm still waiting on the Brady. I took the over with. I didn't bother doing the tight ends tonight because I wasn't sure on Mark Andrews. Like I knew he was going to be playing, but I didn't know how much. And sure enough, he ended up missing out. But I did do the over on Rashad Bateman. I thought he was going to have a huge night, and he's been out as well. So that's been unfortunate. But I took the unders on the running backs, and Gus Edwards. I'm pretty sure he hit the over already, and I don't think Fournette did. Right?
No, Fournette's at 24 yards, and his over.
I know he didn't have a lot.
50, I think was Fournette's over. Yeah, I took
Kenyon Drake.
I took the under on Fournette. I just felt like it was going to be a passing game, and I took Evans at 67.5 instead of Godwin at 70.5. I just took the one that was lower.
I don't blame you.
I felt like they'd both be over, but I was like, I feel like my process was right on the tight ends. I mean, you look at the night Isaiah Likely is having,
huge.
If hadn't banged up the shoulder, he would have crushed that 50.5 yards over that. So I feel like the process was right. I'm gonna have to get a mulligan or something on that.
Yeah, bad luck there.
Sweating Brady.
Yep, I hear you.
And then I also took Lamar rushing. I felt like, at some point I think they've got to kind of revert a little bit back to what makes them successful.
Sure.
And a good portion of that's Lamar running. He's been so reluctant to run this year, and I kind of get it. I mean, but they don't have great pass catching options.
Right.
There's Mark Andrews and a cast of others that don't seem to stay healthy or be top tier. So
yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough. Speaking of top tier, Dennis, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of these quarterbacks because we've had some guys that for a long time we've considered as top tier guys, but they're not necessarily playing like top tier guys. And one of the guys that I know recently wasn't considered a top guy, but for a long time was one of the better fantasy quarterbacks and especially real life quarterback, Matt Ryan, benched for Sam Ehlinger. What'd you think of that?
I thought that was crazy. I don't think it's a terrible move. I mean, Ryan, he's getting beat up. He's throwing for a lot of yards, but he's throwing 55, 60 times a game. I think in something like 5 games or something, he's thrown 40 or 44 more passes, something crazy like that. So, and I get Jonathan Taylor was out, so the running game wasn't quite there, but Deion Jackson came in and ran really, really well. I think Reich has just lost his direction.
Yeah.
going after veteran quarterbacks every year, trying to figure it out. This is the guy. I'm not sure him and Ballard survived this, but I mean, Ellinger is kind of the new wave of quarterback. Very mobile, can run. Maybe doesn't have the greatest arm, but if he makes the right decisions, I don't think you have to. Joe Montana was never known for having a great arm. I think a lot of quarterback play comes down to making the right decisions. Not that I'm not comparing Sam Ellinger to Joe Montana. Let me put that out there. I was just kind of comparing. They don't have great arms.
Fair. Well, I mean, Heavy T says if Sam Ellinger starts, does this mean Texas is back? I mean, Texas.
I mean, with OSU transfer Quinn Ewers, I mean, how can they not be back? We saw what OSU transfer Joe Burrow did for LSU.
Jamison Williams transfers to Bama. Yeah. Look, I'm telling you, even if you just get a taste of that Ohio State goodness, it's good things for your career. That's for sure.
When they get up here, they're eating some of that peanut butter chocolate Buckeye candy.
All right. Well, what about the quarterback in this game, Tom Brady? He's not getting the W's that we're used to. That's for sure. The numbers, especially in the touchdown department, something that last year he was off the charts with, just has not been there so far this year. What are your feelings on Tom Brady?
Man, the fact that they haven't went out and traded for one or two interior linemen baffles me, because to me, that's the crux of everything that's wrong with Tom Brady. He's not mobile. He doesn't move well. I mean, he moves like Matt Ryan. And when he gets pressure up the middle, which is where they've got two really, really good offensive tackles in Tampa, but they lost all three of their interior linemen, and the guys they brought in just aren't up to snuff. And so he's getting a lot of pressure up the middle. That weak interior line hampers Leonard Fournette with the rushing. Rashad White's made a couple plays, but he's just younger and fresher. It isn't that they're opening gaping holes for White and not for Fournette, but him getting that pressure and I think not having a safety blanket like Rob Gronkowski has really affected how he's playing the game. He's having to do things a little bit differently, move a lot more than he's used to. And we see the effect. He gets, I don't know that rattled is the right word. I mean, he's almost as old as me. He's seen a lot of shit. So I don't know that he gets rattled, but there are some things that, when you get to a certain age, your mind is like, do this. And your body's like, yeah, good. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. You're not 25 anymore. And I think some of that just comes down to not really being comfortable in the pocket.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. I think not having the time, that's always been the key to stopping Tom Brady, was, can you get good pressure on him? If you can get good pressure on him, that's what we saw out of the Giants in the Super Bowls. When they were able to get good pressure on Tom Brady. And that's the key for most quarterbacks, right? It's not like Tom Brady's different in that sense. Most quarterbacks, if you get pressure on them, it's not good thing. It doesn't mean good things for their offensive attack. So their teams have been getting some good pressure on Tom Brady, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But part of it is too, we've seen a lot of miscues or a lot of almost too. Specifically thinking the very first play of the game last week, or not very first play, but that first drive last week, the huge bomb to Mike Evans, just flat out dropped it. We had a couple other plays tonight also to Mike Evans where so close to making it happen in a fraction of an inch here or there. And it's a huge play. And it just seems like they've had a lot of bad luck too on top of it. And then you're right, with not being able to run the football as effectively. Tom Brady does great in play action. That's one of his staples is good play action. So I think all of those things together. What about Rodgers? What about Aaron Rodgers? Another situation where legendary quarterback towards the end of his career, not the same team that he's used to. How are we feeling about? Oh, nice play, Julio Jones. Nice catch there. There you go. If depending on the flag, we'll see. But what about Aaron Rodgers? How are you feeling about him?
you know, there's an old saying that says a rising tide lifts all boats. But I mean, at some point, you know, if your boat has a hole, the tide just flows over it. And you know, we've seen him want to get Romeo Dubs involved, and Dubs is making some drops, and he's just not. They're just not connecting. Some of it, I think, has been. I think that might get called back for.
Yeah, it might be incomplete. Yeah. That's a tough one.
But I think that they just haven't quite made the connection, him and Rodgers. Randall Cobb, you know, is the guy he trusts that's been around, but Cobb isn't the same player he was when they played before.
Right.
So he's a step slower. The timing isn't quite right. We've seen him have a good game, but Cobb doesn't stay healthy. Lazard can't stay healthy. Watson can't get healthy. And for whatever reason, they just don't use A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones in tandem enough to make a difference. I thought honestly, they'd use Robert Tonyan a lot more than they are.
I thought so too. I'm surprised.
To me, I just don't know. It's whatever is going on there, whether it's Rodgers being a hero. It's almost like Rodgers and Devontae Adams are kind of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They both want to show each other, hey, I can do it without you.
Sure.
And right now, neither Rodgers nor Adams is having that kind of success. But Rodgers especially is just not getting it done. But, you know, Bakhtiari was out a lot. Elgton Jenkins missed some time. You know, so two of his best offensive linemen. So, you know, again, you go back to pressure on the quarterback. And while Rodgers is historically been good in those situations because he doesn't have like Lamar Jackson mobility, but he has good athleticism.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't run down the field when he gets out of the pocket. So, and he isn't getting out of the pocket now. There's just, I mean, someone got Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, so many guys are just, you know, there's a changing of the guard and the pipeline, it isn't that full. So unless some of these guys have career renaissances or a couple more Geno Smith type guys come floating along, you know, we're going to see some bad quarterback play coming.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Is there any of these guys, you know, you mentioned Wilson as another one. He's not quite as old as Rodgers and Brady, but he's 33, going to be turning 34. Any of those three guys that you would be willing to kick the tires on in Dynasty and say, you know what, I think now is a good time. And John's right. Big play to Julio Jones, ruled no catch. So that's unfortunate. But any of these guys that you would be willing to take the chance on and say, you know what, they've been so good for so much of their career. I think I'm buying back in on one of them. Which is there any of them that you would do that with?
If I was gonna buy back in on one of them, you know, it's probably Brady because he's got the best weapons.
Sure.
Wilson, I like Wilson's weapons, but Nathaniel Hackett just doesn't seem to be the man for the job. And while Judy and Cortland Sutton are good and the offensive line is not bad, there's the coaching connection just hasn't been made there. I don't know. You know, Russ is a notoriously slow starter, but usually by week 5, he started to come around, and he got injured this year, missing a game. It's whether it's the new offense, the new environment, the new players, you know, his husbandly duties, something is just not clicking for Russ. So if I'm buying Russ, I'm buying cheap. He's one I might consider because he is only 33. The downside is Russ is 5'11". He's a small guy, and the small guys can get beat up. He's making Pete Carroll look like a genius right now.
Yeah, he is. That's for sure. I'm with you, though. Russ is the guy that I do want to buy in on. And it's not because that I think he's going to be old Russ again. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I truly do not know. But what I do know is that they really don't have a legitimate out in his contract until 2027. So he is going, for better or worse, he is making way too much money to not be their starting quarterback. I do think Hackett will end up being out, and I think that they'll find somebody that meshes with Wilson a little bit better than Hackett did. So for better or worse, you at least have the assurance of longevity there, and that's the thing that I would take a little more confidence in with Russell Wilson. So, I know you mentioned it when we were talking that you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the trade deadline stuff. Was there a particular deal that you saw that intrigued you, or even one that you are hoping happens?
I don't know that I hope stuff happens just because it's like dynasty fantasy football for me.
It's
so
fun.
That's why I get jazzed when I see, like preseason when you've got Russ getting traded and stuff. Some of these things, Matt Ryan getting traded. I like to watch that stuff happen. And I was thinking just the other day that fantasy football, there's a huge contingent of analytics guys, and there's starting to be a huge contingent of analytics guys in the NFL. And I'm curious if what kind of overlap has happened with those guys, because some of the decision making and I think it goes all the way into making decisions about what players to draft, what players to trade for, how many plays you're going to play a guy, things like that. Because I picked on the over under tonight. I picked. I didn't pick Leonard Fournette as an over because I didn't think they would run the ball. I felt like Brady was after last week. They wanted to get Evans involved. They want to make sure. And so I just, Baltimore is pretty good against the run. Tampa is not good at running it. And so, analytics guys are going into that and they're kind of digging through that. And so I think that some of that may be creeping in. I know they hate fantasy football, but they love that so many people want to watch the games on Thursday night when they're constantly hitting the unders. I think it was LaDainian Tomlinson that said way back in the day, fantasy football is what makes an Oakland Raiders fan and a LaDainian Tomlinson fan, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing,
It's true, though.
It is. There's so many players and team, granted, I probably roster just about every fantasy relevant player across my 26 leagues. But it's when you get some sort of investment going on, it just becomes a lot of fun. I found myself in rookie drafts kind of just looking at, the 211 and 212 and going, all right, well, I guess I'm going to take Wan'Dale Robinson, or I guess I'm going to take Kadarius Toney. Guys like this that were just later than they should have been in rookie drafts, that you just kind of resign yourself. Hey, touchdown Julio and another flag.
Lots of flags there.
But you find yourself kind of going at some of these guys. So I'm curious to see what happens with Kadarius Toney, because I get a little whiff of
touchdown.
I get a little whiff of the Kadarius Toney thing, smelling a lot like our reactions to Clyde Edwards-Helaire going there.
Right.
Oh, this is going to be so great. It's going to be awesome. This is a man. They got to use the perfect guy. And, Edwards-Helaire may be the perfect guy, but they don't use him like the perfect guy.
Right.
And so we may find out that Kadarius Toney is just higher draft capital Mecole Hardman.
Yeah. All right. 2-point conversion here. Julio touchdown is good. 2-point conversion. Tom Brady threw it. Oh, Cade Otton dropped it. There is a flag on the play, though. So I'm guessing defensive holding. That's what it's looking like. But we'll see here. And it was funny. Edward talked about how Otton was getting shut out. And then, right after he said that, it was 2 straight catches that he had. And now almost a 2-point conversion here. It was holding on Queen. So Tampa Bay will get another opportunity. And you have to wonder if we'll see maybe he was holding all over him. Holy cow. It wasn't even close. Wondering if maybe they'll try to run it now this close or if they'll still throw it in. Really curious to watch this play. So watching it live now, they are in shotgun. They are running it, and it did not go well. They put Rashad White in there to run it, which is a bit of a surprise that you wouldn't have your guy Leonard Fournette, big physical bruising. And not that Rashad White's little, but you would think you would have had your veteran guy in there for that. So a bit of a surprise there, but not over yet. Onside kick, we could still see a potential touchdown, but it's not looking good for Tampa Bay. But I was surprised at that play call, especially if you're going to do that under center, maybe even a Tom. Well, what was it at? Was it at the 1 or 2? Because you might even be able. Tom Brady's great at those sneaks.
Yeah, I think it was at the 2. But Chuck Clark just read it great, and
He did.
Number 50, is that Matabuke or something that was on the DN there?
Yeah, that was a great play.
He just ate up the tackle and split it, and was right in White's face there.
Either way, they were going to have to kick an onside kick and have somewhat of a miracle. But now, before it was, okay, we would only have to drive 10 yards and then we could kick a field goal to send it to OT. Now they would have to score a touchdown off of it. Right. So Edward's saying, I think Gator is a big Bucs fan, so maybe he's locked in. That could be true. Maybe he's watching Tom Brady there. I don't know what his NFL rooting interest is. That's a good question. Do you know what Gator's NFL rooting interest is?
I don't. I don't. Actually, I went to check the other day to make sure I was following him on Twitter, and I couldn't find him on Twitter, and so I'm not sure that I'm following him on Twitter. I was like, when he was on last week, I was like, oh, I got to make sure, and then I couldn't remember what his handle was. I think it's not the same as it is.
I think it's like at FF Gator, I want to say. I'll have to double check.
Yeah.
But either way, all right. So we have the kickoff here. Obviously, it's going to be an onside kick. Even with the tough part is no timeouts, and you only have 49 seconds after this play. Probably a little over 40 seconds to go. If they can even get it, they don't. Game over. Isaiah likely recovers it, and Baltimore. Bit of an upset here. Going to Tampa Bay, down a couple of their big offensive weapons, still end up pulling it out. So Edward said Fantasy J77 is the ad. So there we go. Fantasy J77.
Man, likely he's kind of he had a couple games last year. He was at Coastal Carolina.
Correct.
I think some people were like, oh, and then he kind of got poo-pooed a little bit because they didn't play great competition. He wasn't fast, and he's just kind of came in and took care of business.
He has. He's been fantastic. I saw a stat earlier. This is the first time in Tom Brady's career that he has 2 games under 500. Never happened in his entire career, which is incredible. All right, Dennis. Well, before we get you out of here, anything else you want to touch on? Anything else you want to tell the good folks out there?
Just check me out on the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. We broadcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Easy to find, Fantasy Football Roundtable. On the airwaves here at the Bettor Sports Network. Doing some mock drafts. We just released a Superflex mock draft 2-round rookie draft and a 1 quarterback mock draft 2-round.
Nice.
Superflex 212 coming out tomorrow. Anthony Richardson.
Interesting.
QB7, I think he was.
Okay.
I think DJ was 201. We had Levis, and I thought there were
Hayden Hooker, maybe.
Oh, Hendon Hooker went in the first as well. And then DJ at the 201. And I feel like there was somebody between them. I just don't remember who it was in the middle of the second round.
All right. Interesting. Before you get out of here, though, I do want to say this. You have people that you see on air like this that talking, seem like a good guy, seem like a nice guy. One of the things I can say definitively,
but enough about you.
but enough about me. One of the things I can say definitively about Dennis Bennett is Dennis is the exact same guy that you see on the air. That's who he is in person. Legitimately one of the nicest guys that you're going to meet, always advocating for other people. One of the first guys that reached out to me when I started doing this. So everything that you see and you like about Dennis on the air are things that you would like about him in real life. Great guy, always willing to come on here, and I appreciate you taking the time, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you saying all that stuff. I wish I could disagree with you, but that's my wife's job.
Absolutely,
no,
absolutely.
I do. You know, I love talking Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I love talking Dynasty Fantasy Football in the Dynasty Nerds arena. I think we're the best at what we do. We've got a great update on the way for the Dynasty GM. That's a game-changing app, and you know, I don't successfully manage 26 Dynasty leagues without a tool like the Dynasty GM. So, you know, we're at midpoint. You're weeding things out. Hit me up on Twitter. I love to talk about, well, I'm rebuilding. I'm tearing it down. What should I look for? I'm going for it. Like, I'm in a charity league, and I had a really strong wide receivers. I just got DeAndre Hopkins. He's my wide receiver 4. Ooh. And so I needed a running back. My running back was RB2 was Kenyon Drake. Oof. I traded Michael Pittman for Gus Edwards after last week, thinking I'm going to go big.
This is redraft, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a charity league.
Okay.
But I was like, I'm not getting into an haggling. I'm going to send an offer I know that's going to get accepted. I've got the depth here. I've got lots of guys, and I still got a piece of that offense with Alec Pierce. And I didn't think I could get. I had offered some lesser wide receivers for running backs to a couple other people, and I just didn't get. I'm like, I want a guy that I think is good, and I felt like Edwards was gonna be the guy going forward. You know, dinged up again. You know,
tough, man.
Even, you know, and by being the guy, I didn't think he was going to get 75% of the touches. I felt like he was going to get 50 to 55, but in this run heavy offense, I felt like that was going to be enough for my RB2.
Yeah.
But then he's dinged up, so we'll see what happens.
That's how it goes, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I'll see you again next Wednesday.
Sounds good,
Thursday.
buddy.
Thursday. My bad.
Yeah, whatever day. I'll see you both days. You never know.
Well, those days, right? Sweet.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to take a commercial break now, and we will wrap up the end of this game recap a little bit here, talk about a few other topics, and then we'll get you out of here on Thursday night with Dynasty Nerds on Bettor Sports Network.
Front Yard Fantasy, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just banning the porn bots real quick.
Whenever the porn bots, I will say, dude, whenever the porn bots show up, it means we're doing something good. It means that we're showing up. So, you know, they wouldn't find us if we weren't, if the live stream wasn't good. So, you know what? We welcome you here. Tinder-hot-xyz-best adult dating site. One of our biggest fans.
I detach all of my self-worth to how many porn bots come into our show in the morning. If we don't get any porn bots, I go the rest of the day thinking, like, what did I do wrong? Why didn't Tinder-xyz.com want to hang out with me this morning?
Yeah. People ask, how was the show? I'm like, not that good.
No
porn bot showed up.
Moose and Keith, weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Because I never asked you this. When Noah was growing up, when did Noah first where you got a sense that this is what my son wanted to do?
I was really busy during his formative years. I didn't meet Noah until he was about 19.
Nice. So, your wife did a good job.
Yeah, you may want to talk to him. I would say about he started showing a legitimate interest. He started getting curious about how I prepared, what it required, and then I saw a little bit of a shift, 14, 15, where he was concentrating on the on cameras, the interaction between play-by-play and analyst, and started probably taking mental notes at that point of the performance aspect of, okay, you do all this prep, but you got to go out and deliver it. So yeah, probably that 14, 15 range, I thought to myself, this could be something he really wants to do.
Bettor Sports Network is betting, fantasy, collectibles. It's sports talk done better.
Last segment, Dynasty Nerds, Bettor Sports Network. We're hanging out with you until midnight tonight. If you have any other questions, if you have fantasy questions, dynasty questions, redraft questions, maybe you just want to ask me about my favorite board game. I'm nerdy. I'd be willing to talk about my favorite board game. Whatever you want to talk about, hop on. And you know what? Maybe we'll even take a couple calls. We haven't taken any calls tonight yet. And normally the call we take every week is from Gator, and he is MIA. So that leaves more opportunity for the rest of you. Call in. Let's talk about your fantasy football teams. Recapping the game tonight, Baltimore 27, Tampa Bay 22. Final stats were still actually decent for a lot of the big names that were not injured, right? And some good notes here by the producer, Tyler. He says, Bucks lose. So the winner of the Panthers-Falcons game on Sunday will have sole possession of first place in the NFC South. First place in the NFC South will be either the Falcons or the Panthers. Wow. That's tough. All right. Some stats from this game here. We had Tom Brady still had a solid game despite taking the L. Oops, just lost the page here. Tom Brady, 26 for 44, 325 yards still, did get in the end zone. Leonard Fournette still gets up to you about 15 PPR points because of the touchdown, and then 3 receptions for 34 yards. So that's another 6 points right there. Mike Evans has a nice day, 6 receptions for 123 yards. It's about 18 PPR points there. Lamar Jackson, 236 yards. He had the 2 passing touchdowns and also 43 rushing yards, which adds a little bit there. None of the names that you probably would have expected in the receiving game went off tonight because those guys got hurt for the most part. Isaiah Likely came up with a big game, 6 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Demarcus Robinson, 6 for 64. Devin Duvernay had 3 for 31, but he also had that rushing touchdown. Then Kenyon Drake got in the end zone on a reception. He only had, he had 62 rushing yards. So Drake doing well on the ground. I know he had that one big run there at the end of the game. Gus Edwards also 11 carries for 65 yards. So not a bad game as far as fantasy production goes. But, Lamar held up a fan sign. I saw it, fell down. He picked it up, said, number 8, pay him now after the game. You got to pay the man, right? He's too good not to. And look, I get it. He hasn't had a great track record with the playoffs. But as a Browns fan that has always struggled to have a competent quarterback, you have one. You got to pay the man. You got to give him his money. And he's only going to get more expensive as these the salary cap goes up. These deals with all these different networks go up. The salary cap is going to be skyrocketing in these next few years. You got to sign the man. Give him his due. All right. Real quick, we touched quite a bit on the quarterbacks here. Matt Ryan, benched for Sam Ehlinger. Brady and Rodgers, we talked about them a little bit too. One quarterback situation that we did not touch on is the one in New England. Now, real quick, Tyler says Lamar will be a future Falcon, becoming the second coming of Mike Vick. You heard it here first. Now, can you imagine that? You get Mike Vick, basically, Lamar Jackson, which I think Lamar might be a hair better runner. I think Mike Vick might have been a hair better thrower, but very similar players. You're going to give him Kyle Pitts. You're going to give him Drake London, and Calvin Ridley should be back next year as well. So the 3 good receiving options. Now, Arthur Smith doesn't seem to like to throw the football a lot. So it would be interesting to see, assuming he is still the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, how that would all play out. But Lamar would look good in black and red. I'm just saying. I'm with you, Tyler. I think that'd be interesting. And get him out of the Browns division. I'd be fine with that as well. Yeah, we can have him move on to greener pastures. All right. Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi in New England. A little bit of a quarterback controversy. You saw this past week, Monday Night Football game. Mac Jones struggling out there in the first couple games or first couple drives. Put Bailey Zappi in. Touchdowns right away. Touchdowns galore. 2 touchdowns the first 2 drives. Then neither was really effective. Actually, it was Zappi for most of the rest of the game. Wasn't really effective. Rumor has it that Mac Jones is going to be starting this week. He's been taking most of the first team snaps. But I want you to tell me in the comments right now, for fantasy purposes, actually, we're not even going to say fantasy. Let's just say real life. If you are the Patriots, do you want Mac Jones as your starting quarterback? Do you want Bailey Zappi as your starting quarterback? Or do you not want either? Are you saying neither one is the guy? Which is a legitimate answer as well. So would you rather have Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones, or neither? Go ahead and put that in the comment right now. I am going for the moment to stick with Mac Jones. And that's nothing against Bailey Zappi. I've actually liked some of the things that I've seen out of Bailey Zappi. He's exciting. I like his demeanor. But I'm not ready to just throw the towel in on Mac Jones just yet. Just yet. Neither one, obviously has an amazing receiving core. There's a solid line and a solid run game, but there's not a lot to throw to in New England right now. And honestly, I don't know that that's going to change much. That's always been an issue with New England. Drafting receivers has never been their thing. And then even some of the free agents they've brought in haven't really meant much. Right now, Jacoby Myers is still probably their best receiver, although Devontae Parker has played well in spurts. And I have him on a few dynasty teams, and I thought he was a good dart throw. Jalen saying, I am taking Zappi right now. Heavy T saying, in Zappi, we trust. So we got 2 Zappi votes. Time to get Zappi. It would be a fun story, though, right? We had the whole Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady thing. First round pick, looked like the franchise guy, had some success. And then here comes this other guy out of nowhere and just takes the job and runs with it. It would make a very compelling story. And speaking of compelling, Monday night, the bookends. My guy Edward is here to join us on the Dynasty Nerds show on the Bettor Sports Network. Edward, how's it going, buddy?
What's going on, man? I just had to call in. I know big shoes to fill for Gator right now. That's for sure.
We're all mourning a little bit with him not being here. It's tough times on the Dynasty Nerds show, but I appreciate you trying to fill in.
Of course, you started talking about Zappi, and of course, I've been talking about Zappi for the last 4 weeks on my show on Monday.
Yes.
I wanted to fill you in on what I think. At first, I was like Mac Jones all the way, right?
Right.
But then I did some more research on my boy Zappi. He broke records in college for most passing yards and most touchdowns last year for Western Kentucky. The dude can sling it.
He can.
So, in a team that looks like they're going to be down a lot, I think he's the one that should be started going forward. Now they're going back to Mac Jones again. And Belichick, this is the first time I've ever seen him kind of like
a little wishy-washy.
Yeah, because even with Brady, he knew what he was doing, right? This is his guy. He puts him in. And last week, Zappi came in. He had his first 2 drives for touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
this is the new Brady. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, here's a couple of interceptions, and now we're back to where we started. So I think Zappe is going to be something for a little bit now. Mac Jones is like kind of the safer play. He's more like an Alex Smith type quarterback to me. And there are talented receivers on that team that need to be fed, right? You mentioned you got Jacoby Myers.
Yeah.
You have just slipped me right now.
Devontae Parker.
Yeah, Parker, who's a deep ball threat. Zappe can hit him. Mac Jones can't.
Tyquan Thornton they drafted out of Baylor, which
love him too.
He's fast.
Dynasty, not this year, but in the future, I think he's going to be okay. So I think at this point in the season, the Patriots should just go straight to Zappe, straight to him, let it live. The Mac Jones era is kind of over. I mean, yeah, they made the playoffs last year with them, but did we really expect them to go past the first round or into the Super Bowl?
No,
come on.
Well, then what do you do? What do you do with Mac Jones then? Do you try to trade him before the trade deadline here?
Yeah, you could. I mean, there are a lot of teams that could use him.
A lot of teams that could use him, Mac Jones.
But quarterback's a weird thing, especially from Dynasty. It either works or it doesn't.
Right.
And there's no let's wait 2 years. When you wait 2 years nowadays, it just never works like that anymore, right?
It typically doesn't.
Yeah. So it's like the Mac Jones thing worked last year, kind of, but it was a team thing. It didn't work at the beginning of the season. He's hurt. Zappe's throwing the ball. I think you just got to go to him, and you either leave Mac Jones, trade him now, because the Garoppolo, effect. Leave him on, because if Zappe gets hurt, you have that backup to come in. So
it's funny you mentioned Garoppolo, because Garoppolo was one of the New England quarterbacks that ended up getting traded and then had some success elsewhere.
Weren't they all a backup to Brady at one point? Brissett and
most of the league. Most of the league.
Came in the other day for the Raiders first drive. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yep. Brady has had a plethora of backup quarterbacks over the years, and most of them have been like solid but never good. Like Matt, remember who was it that it wasn't Schaub? It was because he was behind Matt Ryan. Who was it?
Oh, Castle.
Matt Castle. Yeah, he led him to the playoffs that one year, and then ended up going to Kansas City for a little bit.
To be a starter, fizzled out too, man. That's crazy.
Oh, Tyler just told me Todd Bowles thinks Shaq Barrett tore his Achilles.
Ooh, that's a tough injury for that defense, man.
Especially for a guy late in his career like that too.
Tom Brady, does he just walk out and quit now?
He's too competitive.
Can he be on my case of the Mondays for a fourth straight week? I mean, Jesus, man, this is insane. But he did not have a bad night tonight. He threw
325
touchdown.
Yeah.
The running game was not there, and the defense just wasn't. I mean, that's a huge injury to the defense, to be honest. But
yeah,
man, you could just see in his demeanor too that he's just not the same Tom Brady he's ever been.
He could just go be a dad now, I guess. Maybe try to save his marriage. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities for him right now to save his career, right? Or his life.
It's like, you know what? Football kind of sucks right now. I'm gonna go back to that. Oh man. Kyle Trask, that's right. Tyler saying Kyle Trask is the backup. We're talking about Kadarius Toney. That was his quarterback at Florida, was Kyle Trask.
Correct.
And
Gator would approve.
What's that?
Gator would approve of that.
Gator would approve of that. Heavy T saying, excuse me while I slide into Giselle's DMs. Oh, Heavy T. Hey, man, shoot your shot.
Yeah, Pete Davis into that one first, man.
Oh, Antonio Brown's all over it already, I'm sure.
Oh, man.
That guy's a
mess.
mess.
Sure, because the way it's looking, I mean, unless they make a trade, right? 500 team. I guess there's no 500 anymore, but so they're not going to have a good draft pick. So Trask may be the starter next year.
It's a real possibility.
Yeah, he has talent. He could move the ball. I watched him in college. I'm a huge college guy too. And at Florida, he was great until I think he got hurt. That's what kind of cost him the end of the season. But
he tried to play in that Oklahoma game, and literally everyone else was not playing. Tony wasn't playing. Pitts wasn't playing, and it tanked his draft stock. People were talking about him as a potential first-round guy, late first, and then he fell to the third with Davis Mills and Kellen Mond, who opposite ends of the spectrum there. Davis Mills ended up getting a starting job, has played well. Mond is like barely in the league anymore.
Canadian football, that's it. Or XFL. Hey,
XFL. Hey, you never know. Better Boss saying, fun fact, I've been stashing Trask in Dynasty and tweeted it out before the game. So, I mean, you never know. You never know what could happen there. But think about how rough it could end up being for the Buccaneers next year, right? I mean, Bruce Arians left, and I think he did that kind of on purpose, seeing like this could get really ugly really quick because Tom Brady is likely gone next year. We've been saying that forever, but
let's take the likely thing out of it. He's gone.
He's gone. Chris Godwin is going to be gone. He's on a franchise tag right now. He won't be back. Fournette's going to be gone.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that might be good. Not for my fantasy team, but maybe for real life. If a guy like Shaquille Barrett has just tore his Achilles late in his career, that's going to be tough to come back from.
I don't think you understand how much that hurts that team. Like that is, maybe they will get a good draft pick now because their defense is not going to be, their captain's gone, right? So
currently the 10th pick in the draft. That's what they currently have. So
they can get a good quarterback. I mean, they can get
Will Levis.
Yeah, there's a lot of good quarterbacks this year, man. So yeah, I mean, but the guy from Kentucky, right?
Yep, the kid from Kentucky.
He looks like he's does have the talent around him, right?
Yeah, so, he's very toolsy. Needs some refinement, but very toolsy.
Yeah, so there you go. We can have that, and Trask can start and see. But yeah, I mean, what did you say earlier? The winner of the Atlanta Falcons Panthers game will have first place in the division.
They'll be in first place in the division. Like what the
heck? Have that on their bingo cards.
No. What the heck? And that's why I was really, this was before we knew the extent of all the Deshaun Watson stuff and we knew how bad it really was. But I was a big advocate of the Carolina Panthers trying to get Deshaun Watson in the offseason before we realized how bad all that was, because the division we knew was not going to be very good. And at that point, we still thought Tom Brady was going to be gone. When he came back, obviously that muddied the water a little bit. But you look at the rest of the division, Atlanta's not good. I mean, they're winning, but they're not good. The Saints, they're not a good team. They're fine. They're middle of the road. But if you would have added a Deshaun Watson to DJ Moore and to Christian McCaffrey and to some of those weapons, and he played at Clemson, which is Carolina, like it would have been a natural fit if they would have made a move and tried to trade for him, but or even if they would have got a Russell Wilson or anything. Like they were so close to being relevant and then just went totally irrelevant, which is tough.
One thing I will say about the Falcons though, and their quarterback, Marcus Mariota, as long as he stays healthy, his entire career, when he's healthy, the dude wins football games.
That's
when
true.
He won football games until he got hurt, and then he kind of fizzled out. When he came in for the Raiders, when Derek Carr got hurt, he almost won a football game from being from behind.
And he was a winner in Oregon as well.
Football games.
Yeah,
not a
true.
great fantasy asset, but a great football game winner. So the Atlanta Falcons could be on to something with him this year.
Well, and I really like their backup quarterback. I like Desmond Ridder as well. I would like to see something work out for him.
A couple weeks ago, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a Ridder guy. I like Ridder. You talk about somebody that won. That's all he did at Cincinnati. He made Cincinnati a program that was an embarrassment to a very, very relevant program. And they're kind of back now to being like, whatever. Again, after his departure, but will definitely be interesting. While I got you on here, real quick, what's your thought on the Breece Hall situation from a dynasty perspective? Because I had talked about the week before that I was ready, and not just ready, I was moving Breece Hall up to my dynasty running back one.
Yeah, he was getting there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was playing fantastic.
Look, his movements, his vision, everything looked great to me. I was a little skeptical at first, and then all of a sudden I'm like, man, this guy has it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you got to hold on to him. He's probably.
Where would you have him now in dynasty? Would you still have him top 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Who would you have ahead of him?
Dynasty. I mean, God, you still got to say Taylor. So young. Taylor's still young enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. What about Barkley?
Barkley, he's older though. He's had a major injury, but so is Hall now. And Barkley's been really good this year. Like, he looks like he did when he first came into the league finally.
He does.
Right? It took a couple of years, but he's playing at that level. So I would put him up there as well. And then there's really, like, we're talking about running back dynasty, right?
Just running back, yep.
Yeah. I'd say Brees Hall third right now, honestly. Because he's
that's where I have him.
Yeah, third, yeah.
Yep, that's where I have him. I agree with you. I think
because there's no other good younger running backs that are showing the type of movement and vision that he has in a while, really.
Yeah. The only other ones that would have like sort of been on the radar, like before the season, Najee Harris, but obviously he's catapulted down. He's been rough. Javonte Williams was in that range, but same issue. He had an injury, so now
his injury is way worse though. That's a full leg out.
Yeah, it's similar to Dobbins in that sense.
Yeah, that's going to be a rough one to come back from, and even on the team he's on, like they don't even give him the ball.
So dumb. Oh, it makes my blood boil. I get so mad about that. So like those would have been two of like the younger guys that would have been up there. But we are seeing two younger guys ascend a little bit right now. Travis Etienne and Kenneth Walker have both played real well, both on the younger side. So they could even be knocking on the door of top 5 guys. I think the other ones in consideration would be players like Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, even though he's a little bit on the older side, he's just playing so well. Yeah. Christian McCaffrey, he's a little bit older, but when he's on the field, it's tough to say anybody's more talented than a guy like Christian McCaffrey. So you have those guys, and another one that's playing really well and is still only, I believe he's actually younger than Najee Harris. I'll double check on this. If he's older, it's not by much. But Josh Jacobs, he's been in the league longer, but he came out very young.
He looks really good. Like they finally got a coach in there to actually scheme for him.
Yes.
Which is working, right? I think he's like number 3 in fantasy points right now.
2.
Yeah, so he's been looking great in that scheme, which we're going to have from. So, yeah, I would put him in the top 5 for sure. When it comes to Walker versus ETN, they're kind of two different type of running backs. I'm really high on Walker. I was high on Walker when the season started.
Yeah.
Because of the system in Seattle. And then I just knew. I mean, come on. Did you not know that Penny would get hurt? Everybody and their mom knew that Penny would get hurt.
Yeah.
Come on. And, of course, guess what happened? He got hurt.
Penny got hurt.
Got the ball, and what did he do? Destroyed.
He's played fantastic.
And like what I look at, his vision, his the way he runs with authority, his cuts, everything looks like he's a natural running back to be in the NFL. The Seahawks got one good there. I think Walker is going to be something better. ETN's kind of a gimmicky more running back. I would actually put a lot of those guys over ETN. I think ETN will have his normal 10 fantasy points a week. But
he's a home run waiting to happen, right? I mean, we're talking about elite. And when I go through and I break down my film, I give grades to certain attributes, and I'm a stickler. I almost never give 10s on any attributes. Like, you have to be one of the elites that I've ever seen. On the acceleration part, I gave Travis Etienne a 10 because the ability to go, and there have been 0 10s on acceleration. And I think on all the attributes I've given for running backs, I've given 110 there for acceleration. And that might be the only 10 in the 3 years that I've done it that I've given any attribute. So his
problem is they got to get in an open field to actually make that happen.
And that is the problem. He has subpar vision. He's not a great pass catcher. They want him to be a good pass catcher, but he's not a natural. Like,
they're trying, aren't they?
Yeah, they want him to be that guy, but he fights the ball. It's not natural for him, so it's difficult. But that attribute alone can propel you to big. I mean, look at Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson had tons of success. Now, wasn't as long as some other running backs, but he had 2 seasons where, I mean, he was the man.
He was the beast. He was the beast of all football, all running backs. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we could see some of that that same type of production out of a guy like Travis Etienne. So it'll be interesting. But the running back room right now is, I think, in the most upheaval that we've ever seen, where normally it's like, okay, we at least know that like these two guys are like our top guys. Right now, I mean, it's just fantasy football players and dynasty fantasy football players are begging to have that 1-1, that guy that everyone is like, yeah, that's the guy for sure. We just don't have that right now. And it'll be really interesting to see how that'll end up playing out. And a guy like Bijan Robinson could end up coming in and taking that spot, maybe even from day one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that too. Yeah, man, that'd be something, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've seen some scenarios that have been close to that. Maybe not quite right away, but when Ezekiel Elliott came into the league, there were a lot of people that were ready to put him towards the top. Maybe not 1-1 at running back, but towards the top. Same thing with Saquon Barkley when he came into the league.
He was right away, right? He was
right away. Yeah, there were people that put him as the top running back. The hard part was him and Zeke were only a year apart. So Zeke was young and just had that monster season. So I think a lot of people still had Zeke ahead of him. But there were a lot of people that were willing to maybe say, like, this could be the top guy right away. And both guys looked really good and produced right away. So it'll be interesting to see how this all ends up coming together and playing out. But it sure is fun.
I know you're running out of time, but one sneaky one.
Okay.
And AJ Dillon.
Don't
get him
say
now.
that. Don't say that.
Get him now. Hold on to him in your dynasty leagues, because next year he could end up being like a 1,000-yard, 10-touchdown beast. Because no one's talking about it right now, because like now's the time to get him. I'll always try to think ahead of everybody.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Thinking ahead is good. I've never been sold on AJ Dillon. His score for me was really low, and he had a couple nice games. He had a couple nice games over the past few years, but we've never seen him take that role. Even when Jones has been banged up, he's been fine. But then what's going to happen once Bakhtiari is gone, Rodgers is gone? Like, I don't know, man.
Get him really low right now for next year.
All right,
he's still young.
He is still young.
He could be Eddie Lacy. We don't know, but he may.
Telling me there's a chance. All right. Appreciate you hopping on, buddy.
All right. Talk to you, man. Good show.
All right. We'll see you. All right. The bookends meet again. Absolutely love Edward. He does a great job. Monday Night Rants. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I've watched quite a few of them. I've even been on one of them and really enjoy what he does over there. He does a fantastic job. So appreciate him coming on. That wraps up our show for tonight. Thank you so much. I just mentioned Edward, Dynasty Rich Dotson for hopping on, Dennis Bennett at Culture Coach for hopping on. Appreciate Tyler and Sean behind the scenes. They do a fantastic job, always in my ear, informing me of stuff that's going on. Really appreciate all the things that they do. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price, and we will see you guys next week.